So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto awakens the two bloodline of God. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Sasuke rammed his Chidori into Naruto's chest. Naruto, tired of holding back his true power, and tired of Sasuke period, shoved his weakened Rasengan into Sasuke's arm, completely blowing it off. Sasuke started screaming and crying in pain, and all Naruto could do was laugh weakly. I mean, come on, he takes a Chidori out the chest and doesn't even whimper, and Sasuke gets his arm blown off and has to go all drama queen on him. Naruto wobbled before falling over. Damn, he had taken too much damage. Suddenly his eyes widened. Fuck. He could feel Orochimaru's and Kabuto's chakra speeding towards them. He sighed when he also felt Kakashi's, which was closer. Kakashi burst through the trees to see Sasuke missing an arm and Naruto with a hole through his chest. He can also feels Orochimaru's chakra coming closer. Damn it, he would have to leave one if he wanted to get away safely. He looked at Naruto once before rushing over to Sasuke and picking him up. He was about to leave when he heard a weak "Sensei," and saw him giving him a confused and hurt look. He turned to leave, sighed, then said, "Naruto, I'm sore. Right to say this, but no one cares about you back in the village. Everyone cares about Sasuke. I can only carry one of you and be fast enough to not get caught by Orochimaru. Besides, Sasuke is a genius, and you are a dead last. The village needs good ninja, not bad ones." With that he sped off into the trees. When he was out of sight, Naruto started to cry. Not because of his sensei's word, but Becca's. He knew he would never see her again. They had been having a secret relationship since he was 10. For 3 years. He loved her, but he would never see her again. She was 19 now, and she was beautiful. He cried and cried for her. He would miss her. He thought about all the time they spent together. They had met when he was 8. She had rescued him from a mob and they had been friends ever since. Then after 2 years they started to be something more. While he was crying, Naruto's eyes turned black with 4 white rings around it and a white star as a pupil. But it changed back into his normal blue eyes. He was cut out of his thoughts when he sensed Orochimaru and Kabuto jump into the clearing. At full strength he could probably take Orochimaru since he had trained with Kyuubi and her. But he was severely injured and one of his lungs wasn't working properly yet, so he knew he was outclassed. Orochimaru was pretty pissed that Sasuke had escaped, but now he had the Kyuubi Gaki. Naruto looked up at Orochimaru and saw a gleam in his eye that promised pain. That was the last thing he saw before he passed out. Konoha when Kakashi arrives. Right when Kakashi arrived he was bombarded with questions. The ones asking were Jiraiya, Tsunade, Iruka, Shizune, Hinata, who was stuttering the whole time, Gaara, more like demanding things, and surprisingly the rookie Junin, Kurenai and Anko. After he told them to quiet down and they did, he told them how he had arrived to see Naruto limping towards an unconscious Sasuke. He helped him and they headed back to Konoha. He told them how Orochimaru had attacked them. But before they could go all out, Naruto interfered, giving a big speech about courage, the Hokage way, and protecting his precious people. He then unleashed 3 tails of Kyuubi's chakra and told Kakashi to run and save himself and Sasuke while he took on Orochimaru. By the end of the story the ladies were bawling and the 2 men were crying silently. Kakashi sighed. That was close. Luckily they believed him. He gave himself a mental pat on the back for making up such an elaborate story on the spot. After the tears stopped temporarily, Kakashi escorted Sasuke to the hospital. Otogakure with Naruto. Naruto hung on the wall in some kind of dungeon. He looked up as Orochimaru entered with Kabuto. He watched as Kabuto did some kind of technique on a dead body. When he turned he had a white glowing glob on his index and middle finger. He walked over to Naruto and jammed it into his temple. All Naruto saw was a flash and he suddenly knew about 100 more jutsu. He looked at Orochimaru in confusion. Orochimaru smirked and said, "Do you like it? I call it Omoiten. Dakata Tensou no Jutsu 1. Kabuto tortured a Yamanaka and learned the secret to their mind jutsu. He then twisted one of them and this is the result. Even though I'm over 50, that's not enough time to learn all the jutsu I know. I would have had to learn them all back to back. Then I wouldn't have had time to plot the downfall of Konoha. So this jutsu sped up the process. It takes all the jutsu learned by the person it's used on and implants that knowledge into another person. The thing is, the person you used the jutsu on to take the knowledge has to be dead. You only have 20 minutes to use the jutsu after someone has died, and you have to have the chakra control of a med nin, which even though I am a sanin, I don't have, so I have to have Kabuto do it for me. Naruto continued looking at him before asking, "Why are you showing me this?" Orochimaru gave another smirk and replied, "Because we recently killed a seal master and with his knowledge have found a way to suppress Kyuubi." Naruto's eyes widened. Orochimaru gave a cruel smile before saying, "That's right. I can now possess your body. With all the jutsu I'm going to cram into your head, you'll be the perfect host." He then gave off a cruel maniacal laugh before he left. Month 1 in Odo. Naruto looked up as Kabuto walked in. Behind him a couple Odo nins dragged in some ninjutsu specialists. There were 2 Kaiden specialists, 4 Doden specialists, 2 Suiden specialists, 3 Raiden specialists, 3 Fuden specialists, a rare Hyouten specialist, and another rare Sunatun 2 specialist. You could tell that they had been tortured and were barely alive. Naruto looked at them with pity and at Kabuto with anger. He made a silent promise to himself that he would avenge their deaths. He then had to watch as Kabuto killed them. He turned away as he did it. It was bad enough that they had today, but what made it worse was that it happened because of him. It had only been 2 weeks since he had been abandoned by Kakashi, and in that time he had only been fed 3 times. Kabuto had said something about keeping him weak by underfeeding him. He scoffed. He had gone almost 3 whole weeks without food once, so he could handle this. Even though he could survive this, he could already feel his muscles deteriorating from lack of vitamins, protein, and whatnot. He felt Kabuto push the knowledge of the first guy into his head and gritted his teeth. Learning so much at one time hurt. He had felt worse pain, but pain was pain no matter how little. 30 minutes later Kabuto was finally done and had left. When he was sure Kabuto was really gone, he delved within his own mind. He walked up to a huge cage that held the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He looked into the cage and saw 2 huge red eyes. He sat down in front of the cage and sighed before asking, "Have you thought of any way to escape yet, Kyuubi-sensei?" The Kitsune looked down at the 13-year-old boy and shook her mighty head. She sighed and spoke in a roaring voice, "No, Kit. I have been busy healing your wounds and muscles. NCE, you used so much of my chakra I had to wait or I could have hurt you. During the time I had to wait, the Chidori wound got infected and got worse, so it took longer to heal it. Anyways, you have to think of a plan while I heal you. It will take close to a month to heal all of your wounds, so come back then." Naruto nodded and silently left. When he woke up, outside his mind Kabuto was sitting across from him and studying him closely. Suddenly he spoke, "Were you asleep or talking to Kyuubi?" He then seemed to answer his own question, "No, that shouldn't be possible. You were probably asleep from lack to be it." He then got up and left the room. Naruto sighed and thanked Kami they didn't know his true strength or that he could talk to Kyuubi. He closed his eyes and really went to sleep this time. In Konoha, even though it had been 2 weeks since Naruto died, the villagers were still celebrating. Naruto's friends were all gathered in front of his coffin in Konoha's shinobi cemetery. The ones that were attending were the Rookie 8 and Team Guy, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Anko, the sensei of the teams, and surprisingly a good number of Konoha shinobi. When Naruto's friends asked them why they had come, they all replied that he had saved Konoha Nin and the cost of his life and helped in the war, so he was considered a hero in their books. After the funeral they made a custom stone for Naruto. When his friends asked Tsunade why they couldn't put his name on the memorial stone, Tsunade just started to curse and wish death upon the council. On the stone there were some words carved in. They read, "This site is dedicated to Uzumaki Naruto. A brother to some, a friend to all." After some tears everyone went their separate ways except one. One person stayed and cried to herself so no one would hear or see. It was her. Month 2. Naruto looked away as 5 genjutsu experts were killed. More tainted knowledge was placed into his head. This month Kabuto started to heal his muscles. When asked why, he was told that in 6 months they were going to see how strong he was and if Orochimaru was able to take his body yet. His muscles were only healed enough to move, so taijutsu was out of the question. When Kabuto left, he once again went to speak with Kyuubi. Kyuubi was asleep, so he just sat and waited for her to wake up. 30 minutes later he lost his patience. "Wake up, you damn fucking furball." Quote. Kyuubi blinked awake and yawned. She looked down at Naruto and blinked again. She would get him back as soon as they were back in Konoha. She yawned again and said, "Oh, okay. I think I know what to do first. When we escape, we are going to have to take Kabuto, Orochimaru, and a couple of Oto Junin, too. So first of all we need to practice your taijutsu without being caught. I mean, if you can barely walk, I don't think you'll be able to take Kabuto, let alone Orochimaru. What you need to do is learn to do Kawarmi and Kage Bushin seal less. After that, make a Kage Bushin and Kawarmi with it to get out of the shackles. Then start practicing your taijutsu. Then use one of the powerful genjutsu you now know to make it look like you're still in bad shape. After you're done doing that, we'll go from there. Remember, this is going to take a couple of months to do, so be ready to work hard." He nodded and left once again. When he was outside his mind, he saw that it had only been half of the time he had spent in his mind. He stored that info in the back of his mind for later and went to sleep. In Konoha, most of the people at the funeral were still mourning Naruto's death. They worked and went on as usual, but their minds just kept wandering to him. Hinata kept thinking about how she never told him how she felt. Neji kept thinking of how he never got to thank him for getting him to see that fate didn't exist. Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji just missed him and respected him a lot more now. Lee was sad because his eternal rival was gone. Tenten didn't know him that well, but still respected him just as much as everyone else. Shino was sad because a friend of his that was unbiased about his bugs was dead. Tsunade, Iruka, and Jiraiya were hit really hard because they had all bonded with him at some point. The only ones who didn't care were Team 7 and Ino. Ino didn't care as long as her Sasuke-kun was alright. Sakura was happy he was gone because that gave her extra time with Sasuke-kun. Sasuke, who was healed reluctantly by Tsunade, didn't care because he thought that he was Adobe and would just get in his way. Kakashi was happy that Naruto wasn't begging him for training that he didn't need. Not that they knew that. Now he could concentrate on Sasuke. Month 3. When Naruto looked up to see Kabuto coming in, he was surprised to also see Orochimaru. Item hadn't been in here since they first brought him to this dungeon 3 months ago. As the Oto Nin started to drag taijutsu masters in, Orochimaru walked up to him. After a minute or two of silence, Orochimaru smiled and said, "Naruto-kun, one of our spies in Konoha has just turned in his tri-monthly report. Do you know what everyone believes and why they haven't sent out search teams out for you?" Naruto's eyes widened slightly when he heard that they hadn't sent any teams out for him. He looked at Orochimaru and asked, "Why?" Orochimaru's insane smile grew and he replied, "Well, a certain Hitaki Kakashi told them a story of how you died protecting them from me." Anger flashed in Naruto's eyes, which transformed again for a brief second. How dare he do this to him, that Tem? He felt a stab of pain when he realized how much pain she must be in thinking he was dead. He flared his chakra and struggled against his bonds and started cursing out loud while thinking of all the ways to kill Kakashi. Orochimaru smiled again before leaving as Kabuto started his technique again. While Kabuto did that, Naruto thought about how far he had gotten with his techniques. He had mastered the seal-less Kawarmi and was now working on the Kage Bushin. He knew he would have it done by the next month. In Konoha, some of the people that knew Naruto were starting to forget him. His close friends still remembered and promised that they always would. His old apartment was burned to the ground while the villagers danced, sung, and celebrated over the demon's death. The Hokage came and broke it up. But most got away, and the ones who didn't wouldn't snitch on their partners in crime. Naruto's friends asked Tsunade why this kept happening and why the villagers hated Naruto so much. She wouldn't tell them at first, but after they asked again and again, she cracked under the pressure. After his friends learned of his burden, they respected him even more. Month 4. He had finally done it. He had mastered the seal-less Kage Bushin. After Kabuto left and took the body of some experiment that Orochimaru had done that gave the guy the power to use Mokuden Jutsu, for he quickly did the jutsu and he was out of the shackles. He knew he couldn't leave the room yet, but that wasn't his goal. Now it was time to retrain his body. Plus, he had some new taijutsu styles to practice. In Konoha, the list of people that continued to remember Naruto narrowed down again. Even some of his friends started to forget about him. It wasn't really their fault. They were all really busy and most kept telling themselves that they had to move on with their lives. Yet some could not do it that easily. Especially her. The villagers noticed that it wasn't as bright and happy without Naruto, but they ignored that because he was a demon, so it didn't matter. Well, that's what they thought. Month 5. This time when Kabuto came in, he brought people with bloodline limits. First was a guy that had to be related to Haku because he could use Hyouden Jutsu with little to no chakra. Then came some guy from Iwa that could make his skin as hard as stone and had super strength. Then came a girl who could use Suiden Jutsu without a water source like the Nadaime. Then a woman who could use Yuden. Last, Kabuto brought in 3 people with Konoha forehead protectors, 3 on. He recognized them as a Hyuga from the main branch, Anara, and Akamichi. Kabuto explained that he wouldn't be getting the Byakugan, but the knowledge of the Juken and where all of the Tenketsu are. He would be able to manipulate shadows from the Nara. From the Akamichi he would be able to enlarge his body parts. Kabuto went on explaining how he tweaked the Akamichi bloodline limit to work with muscles instead of fat. Soon after Kabuto left, Naruto got back to training and planning with Kyuubi. In Konoha, after being gone for so long, the list of people that remembered Naruto narrowed down to 4. Even Hinhout Naruto to Brig. Everything up Konoha seemed to get gloomier and gloomier. Some of the villagers had started to visit his memorial to trash it every day. This went unpunished, seeing as most had forgotten it was there. Even though most of the villagers still hated him, little by little some were starting to see how much of a mistake they made and hoped he could forgive them wherever he was. Month 6. This Tim. When Kabuto came in, he brought in several Kenjutsu masters and a collection of swords that he stored in the room across from Naruto's dungeon room. When Kabuto left, Naruto was suddenly sucked into his mind. He appeared in front of Kyuubi and waited for him to speak. He knew Kyuubi never called him here unless it was for something important. Kyuubi opened her eyes and spoke. "Kit, I did something you might not like." Naruto looked at Kyuubi through narrowed eyes, then asked, "What are you talking about, Kyuubi?" Kyuubi averted his eyes from and said, "Well, you know how the seal's supposed to work, right?" Naruto nodded and said, "Hi. Chu-san made the seal so I would slowly absorb your chakra." "You know that, so why ask?" Kyuubi shifted nervously before saying, "Well, I thought you needed an extra boost in power when you fought Orochimaru, so 4 months ago I kind of started forcing my chakra out of the seal into your chakra storage. I have been doing it for the last 4 months and you have almost gained the 3rd tail. You will gain it in about a month and a half." Naruto stood there for a second, then slowly nodded. Kyuubi had explained once that once he absorbed enough tails he would become a Hanyu. He was supposed to become one after he absorbed the 5th tail, which was supposed to be in about 10 years. Now it would happen in about 2. That must be why Kyuubi was so nervous. Naruto looked up at the fox and said, "Don't worry, it's okay that you did that. I'm not mad or anything." Kyuubi let out a sigh of relief. The kid was a genius when it came to torture, and she didn't want to be on the receiving end of that torture. "Also, while I was healing you body, I found out you have a bloodline, but what it is or what it does I don't know." Naruto stood there wide-eyed for about a minute. For the rest of the day they sat and talked about their escape and what they would do afterward. In Konoha, almost everyone in Konoha had forgotten Naruto. None of the villagers even bothered to trash his memorial anymore. Although nobody noticed that, or they were in denial, but it was really dark and gloomy in Konoha without Naruto. Now, the only ones who remembered Naruto were Iruka and her. Month 7. Kabuto had just dragged out more bodies. This time they had brought in some nin who had some rare kinjutsu in their arsenal. After the bodies were out of the room, Kabuto came back in. He walked up to Naruto and said, "I just came to tell you that next month you won't be absorbing any knowledge from anyone. Orochimaru just wants you to rest, seeing how he will be testing and possibly taking your body." As he said this, he was healing what looked like unused muscles, but they were actually fine, and Kabuto was only strengthening them. He then left the room. Naruto thought about his plan. It was almost perfect. He didn't want to call it perfect cause then it would probably fail. Anyways, what he was going to do was after the power transfer from Kyuubi he would fight and kill Orochimaru and Kabuto. Go back to Konoha and collect the bounty on their heads, then finally go see her. He really hoped she hadn't moved on. In Konoha, now even Iruka had forgotten Naruto. He was just too busy with work at the academy and the upcoming Junin exams. The only one who didn't forget was her. She was having a hard time trying not to forget though. She had already forgotten to visit his memorial twice. But she still remembered, even if only a little. Month 8. Naruto was ecstatic. Not too long from now he was going to be able to see her again. Orochimaru and Kabuto came into the room and unshackled him. They took him into a training room and Orochimaru stepped back while Kabuto fell into a ready stance. Naruto wondered what he should do. He decided to end it quickly. His shadow shot out far past the limited area in which it was supposed to stay. It latched onto Kabuto and he couldn't escape. Naruto enlarged his muscles and crushed Kabuto easily. He turned to see Orochimaru looking down on him from his balcony with a smile. He jumped down and started walking towards Naruto. He laughed and asked, "Are you going to kill me? Do you think you're strong enough?" Naruto smirked and blurred out of existence. This caught Orochimaru by surprise, since his muscles were supposed to be next to dead. He was punched in the gut and slammed into the wall on the far right. He coughed up blood but got back up quickly. They started exchanging blows, but it was clear Naruto was faster and stronger. Orochimaru pulled out grass cutter and sliced at Naruto, but he was useless because Naruto just hardened his skin with his stolen bloodline limited. They fought and exchanged more blows. Naruto sealed off some of his tenketsu and stabbed him with some ice needles. He jumped back and flew through seals before shouting, "Suiden, Daibikufu no Jutsu." 5 water through Orochimaru left and right before slamming him into a wall. He was then punched and kicked multiple times before Naruto went through more hand seals and said, "Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu." 6 The water dragon slammed into him and broke a couple of his ribs. He then jumped over to Orochimaru and did another jutsu. Suiden, Suoro no Jutsu. 7 When he had Orochimaru in his prison he went through some one-handed seals before saying, "Hyouten, Isuyaib no Jutsu." 8 He aimed his sword at Orochimaru's heart and stabbed into the prison. Orochimaru moved just in time, but the sword still managed to pierce his left lung. He landed on the ground and was breathing heavily and was coughing up a good amount of blood. He looked up to see Naruto running through seals before he shouted, "Kaden, Karyu Enden no Jutsu." He burned everything but Orochimaru's head to ashes. He then went over, got Kabuto's head and burned the rest of the body. He found a bag in Orochimaru's office and stuffed the heads in there. But what he did not know that those were not really Orochimaru's and Kabuto's heads. Just some really strong earth clones. He stole some clothes out of some closet. He was now wearing baggy black cargo pants with the bottoms wrapped in white medical tape. He also had a black, tight t-shirt on with white medical tape going from his elbows to the tips of his fingers. He also had black shinobi sandals on. He also took 2 katana, a scythe and a zanbato from the room with all the weapons. He took off out of Orochimaru's palace and snuck out of Otogakure and into the night. Before he disappeared into the night he whispered, "I'm coming back for you. Nai-chan." In Konoha, the way in Konoha 19-year-old Yuhi Kurenai was standing on her balcony watching the stars and thinking of her Naru-kun. Suddenly the wind picked up and she thought she heard something that sounded like, "I'm coming back for you, Nai-chan." It sounded like Naruto too. She shook her head and sighed. She was just imagining things. She went back inside and went to bed. Naruto followed Kyuubi's direction to find Madara. When finally he came to a tower that had the kanji for rain. So Madara is in there, Naruto thought as he created a mirror of ice in front of him, which he then walked through. In a random room, Madara was in his room looking through the window when he sensed Kyuubi's chakra enter the city. He knows Kyuubi would come after him, so he just to wait for it to come for him, and he was right. Madara sensed a small chakra spike in his room and saw an ice mirror appear with a figure in it. The figure then walked out of the mirror. The figure was wearing baggy black CA/RGO pants with the bottoms wrapped in white medical tape, black tight t-shirt on with white medical tape going from his elbows to the tips of his fingers on, and 2 katana, a scythe and a zanbato. So you are the container of the mighty Kyuubi. I know Kyuubi was still alive for all these years and you brought it to me, thanks. Madara said as he walked to Naruto. I did not come here to give you Kyuubi, I come to kill you. Bastard. Naruto yelled at Madara before he launched himself toward Madara. Madara laughed and asked, are you going to kill me? Do you think you're strong enough? I lived through all 3 of the great ninja wars. Naruto tried to punch him, but caught the punch and flung Naruto across the room. Naruto landed on the wall at the last second before he launched several hundred ice needles at Madara, who dodged most of them but a few stuck in his right arm. The reason other people can hear them is because Madara's room has seals in it. Madara roared, Kaden, Karyuen, Dan no Jutsu, and a dragon made out of fire flew out of Madara's mouth. Not good at fight scenes, if you want to write one for me PM me one. Naruto managed to pin Madara's hands to the wall with A.T. Wokanai in his stomach with his zanbato. Naruto had Kyuubi's chakra swirling around him. Naruto started to walk towards him, moving slowly because of him wounds. So you love that precise eye of yours. Let's see what happens when I take. Naruto said as he walked towards Madara's body, who was freaking out about his eye. Naruto final was at Madara's body reaching for his only Sharingan eye, while Madara was trashing around screaming for him to stop. Naruto looked at Madara with his unknown bloodline before he plucked out his eye and ate it. Naruto then killed Madara by slashed off his neck with his claw-like nails. Then licking it clean. Kyuubi's chakra stopped swirling around Naruto when it flew towards his stomach. He suddenly started to see image play, his eyes hurt, and he had a headache. Mindscape. Naruto woke up and found himself inside his head, in front of Kyuubi. What the hell happened? Why did I just see some stuff that I never saw before? It was like having Omoiten, Dakata, Tensou no Jutsu used on me but with more info. Naruto asked Kyuubi. Room. Naruto had woken up and looked around to see that not even a second had gone by. Naruto walked towards Madara's old mask and put it on. When it changed its features. Now it had another eye hole, was white, and had the word Kami in black kanjis on his forehead. Also Naruto's hair turned snow white. Naruto was not surprised that the mask changed or his hair color. From Madara's memories that the mask can transform with a mere thought and change his hair color. Naruto also learned about his bloodline, called Rinnegan. Naruto also learned that his was different the others, because of the white star as a pupil and the colors. The door started to open and a figure said, Madara, we need to talk. The figure was Pain, from Madara's memories. Sorry, Madara is indisposed right now, but he said to tell you I am your leader now, Naruto said to Pain when he saw Naruto standing in front of Madara's died body. Who are you? Asked Pain, while his body tensed just in case he had to fight. I said I am your new leader, you can call me Kosuken, Creation Lord. Get me all the people that knew Madara in 5 minutes. And if you don't I will kill you, okay? Said Naruto with a demonic voice at the end. 5 minutes later, in front of Kosuken were Pain, Itachi, Zetsu, and Konan. Okay, all of you, my name is Lord Suken and I will be your new leader. Also I will take over all of Madara's position, any questions? Asked Naruto Kosuken, in a childish voice. Yes, how about you die? Asked Konan as everyone in the room expect Naruto got in a fighting stance. Oh, I would not do that if I were you, said Kosuken. And why is that? Asked Itachi in his emotionless voice. Because you might die, little girl, said a voice behind Itachi. Who flinched at the girl part? When the 4 members of the Akatsuki turned around they saw 6 Kosuken around each of them with a weapon at their neck ready to kill them. See, I told you I would not do that if I were you. Also Pain, I have clones ready to kill all of you path including you really body. And those weapons will absorb your chakra, so your Bansho Tenin Jutsu won't work, said Kosuken. The clones started receding back into the darkness. Now if you try to do that again I will torture you with your worst nightmare ever before I kill you all. And I know all of worst nightmares. Like yours Conan, it is pain dying, and Itachi, yours is you family being killed. Now all of you go except you Itachi, Kosuken said with his eyes closed. The 3 other members of the Akatsuki left, leaving Itachi and Kosuken alone. He opens his eyes, revealing his Sharingan to Itachi. Now young lady, drop that weak genjutsu and reveal your true face, and don't try to say you don't know what you are talking about. Hitomi, said Kosuken. So how did you know? Not even Madara know, asked Hitomi. Hey, I can you everything, Hitomi, but ninjas have to have their own secrets too. Anyways Hitomi, I found some problems in Madara's plan, like if a member dies. But I found the perfect solution, like using the rest of the living Uchiha, since I know you saved most of the women like your mother. Bring them all here at midnight tonight, okay, said Kosuken. No, I won't let you use my family for you twisted schemes, Suken said as she brought out her katana, ready to fight. Fine then, I always could kidnap them and take them back to Konoha and let them be used as a breeding stock. Anyways, if the other Uchihas join, I will give them a seal that will teleport them back here, so they won't die, okay? Think about it, okay? I will see you at midnight, said Kosuken as he faded out of the room. Hitomi put on her genjutsu back on and walks out of the room with a scowl on her face. Midnight. The room was pitch black, and the only thing you could see was a pair of Sharingan eyes. Suddenly 20 pairs of Sharingan eyes appeared in front of the first one, staring at it. Thank you Hitomi for beginning your family here. Also I see you are having problems with your vision because of Mangekyo Sharingan. I will give you something to stop that when I return next month. For the rest of you I want you to train you Mangekyo Sharingan justice, so you will master them by the time you join the Akatsuki, said Kosuken. But only Hitomi has the Mangekyo Sharingan, how are we supposed to get it? Asked an Uchiha, which Naruto remembered as Makoto. Uchiha, well that can be easily fixed, said Kosuken as his Sharingan eyes turned to Mangekyo Sharingan of the Baryoku C profile. The last thing the Uchiha women saw that night was a swirling vertex. The only 2 that was not on the ground was Suken and Hitomi. What did you do to them? Asked Hitomi with her Mangekyo Sharingan active. Kurenai, Kakashi, and Anko rushed through the trees heading towards Konoha. They were all breathing heavily, but could not rest, seeing as they were being chased by Itachi and Kisame of the Akatsuki. 2 days ago they had been given a mission to intercept a Akatsuki spy that was leaving Konoha. What they didn't know was that he was going to be meeting 2 of the actual members. Flashback. E3 Junin jumped from tree to tree following behind the Akatsuki spy. They learned that he was meeting another spy and they would swap information before they parted ways. Day 1 was uneventful. It was just traveling across the countryside. When the spy stopped for the night, they took turns watching to make sure he didn't leave without them knowing. The second day is when the spy met up with his accomplice. At first nothing unusual happened. The spies talked quietly and kept glancing around, but that was normal behavior for a spy. Then the spies smiled and disappeared in twin puffs of smoke. The Junin's eyes widened and they barely dodged the attack from behind them. They looked up to see Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki. Kisame. Itachi looked indifferent as usual and Kisame looked like he really wanted to chop something or someone up. Before Kisame could attack, Itachi looked at Kurenai and narrowed his eye. Kurenai, do you know what happened to Naruto-kun? Kurenai was confused by this question. They had a spy in the village, so wouldn't they know he was dead? And another thing, why ask her when his sensei was right next to her? She decided to voice her thoughts and asked, you have a spy in the village, so you should know he's dead. And why ask me when his sensei is standing right there? When she said the last part, she pointed at Kakashi for emphasis. Itachi glanced over at Kakashi and snorted, shocking everyone there because that was a sign of emotion. Like you can call Kakashi his sensei. The Akatsuki have monitored Naruto-kun since birth. All Kakashi ever taught him was tree climbing. We know Naruto-kun's true strength and his connection to you, he said emotionlessly. Kakashi looked over to Kurenai. She had a connection to his ex-student. Maybe they were friends or something. He looked over at Anko and was surprised that she wasn't surprised about this connection. Kakashi almost slapped his head. Of course, Kurenai and Anko were best friends, so Anko would know of this connection. His thoughts turned to what Itachi had said about them monitoring Naruto since birth. That meant that they had multiple spies in the village and that they had people following Naruto even when he was on missions outside the village. If that was the case, why hadn't they taken him already? Kakashi just tried to push these confusing thoughts out of his head and turned back to Itachi. Itachi looked at Kurenai and knew she didn't know about Orochimaru having Naruto. Well, he wasn't going to tell her. Anyways, that wasn't the main reason they were here. These three had heard some things they shouldn't have, so they had to die. Itachi activated his Sharingan and Kisame, who had been standing there bored the whole time, gripped the handle on his sword. That was the only warning the three Junin got before they were attacked. Itachi flew at Kakashi while Kisame jumped at Anko and Kurenai. In about a minute the Leaf Nin were already breathing heavily. Kurenai gave the signal and they bolted towards Konoha. Flashback end. They had been running for hours and were surprised they hadn't been caught yet. They knew they were still being followed because they could still feel the Akatsuki pair's chakra tailing them. Suddenly the pair's chakra signature disappeared only for it to reappear in front of them. They ground to a halt in front of the two powerhouses. Kakashi U.N. covered his Sharingan and Kurenai and Anko both fell into defensive stances. There was no way around this. They had to fight. Kisame rushed over to Kurenai and Anko while Itachi took on Kakashi again. Anko dodged Kisame's sword by jumping over it, while Kurenai ducked under it. Kurenai flashed through seals and shouted, "Kaden, Ryuka no Jutsu 1. Kisame's eyes widened slightly. He didn't expect her to know any high-powered Kaden jutsu. Acting quickly he went through hand seals and yelled, "Sweden, Sujinheki no Jutsu 2. The water barrier blocked the Kaden attack and evaporated, leaving the clearing they were in covered in mist. Kisame grinned and thought, now I've got them. Just like all the other swordsmen of Kurigakure, he too had learned silent killing. Before he could do anything though, he heard a jutsu called out. Sene Jishu no Jutsu 3. Snakes wrapped around his body and threw him across the clearing, slamming him into a tree in the process. He landed on the ground heavily. But then there was a poof, and instead of Kisame there was a log. Anko jumped out of the way just as Samahata would have shaved into her. She looked around but couldn't see anything through the mist. She heard some kunai cut through the air and assumed it was Kurenai going on the offensive. Kurenai was crouched in a tree not far from where Anko just dodged Samahata. She threw some kunai in Kisame's general direction, hoping to draw him out. She heard him block the kunai and them clatter to the ground. She charged at him and aimed a roundhouse kick at his head. Her foot slammed into his head and he flew through the air. He landed on the ground and dissolved into water. Kurenai's eyes widened. She turned around only to see Kisame swinging Samahata like a baseball bat and slamming it into her gut. She flew into a nearby tree and coughed up blood. She slumped down and tried to regulate her breathing. She looked up and saw Anko charging at Kisame. Anko ducked under Samahata and landed a 3-hit combo on Kisame's gut. He stumbled back but regained his footing quickly. He grabbed her punch and threw her up into the air only to bring her back down with an axe kick. Anko rolled away before Kisame could do any more damage. She stumbled up and looked around for Kisame. As she looked around she tried to think of a plan. Damn it, he's playing with us. I need to get up close, then I can use it on him, she thought hastily. She looked up to see Kisame flying down at her from above. She dodged to the right only to get kicked in the ribs. She flipped up and grabbed one of his hands. She quickly forced it into the position she wanted it in and whispered, "Soja Sausai no Jutsu 4. Before the jutsu could take effect, Kisame dissolved into water once again. She cursed and flipped over Kisame, who was about to attack her from behind. She went through more hand seals and shouted, "Raiden, Denko Tora no Jutsu 5. A lightning bolt struck the ground and formed into a tiger. The tiger charged at Kisame, who dodged and shaved it into oblivion. Anko charged at him again, but she suddenly started feeling very weak. She looked at Kisame to see him smirking. He chuckled slightly and said, "How do you like Samahata's special ability? It can suck chakra out of people. You were using chakra to enhance your speed, so Samahata sucked it out. Now you're tired while I'm fine." He picked her up by the neck, then kneed her in the stomach. She fell to the ground, coughing up blood. He kicked her in the stomach and sent her into a tree, where she landed close to Kurenai. Kisame looked over to see Itachi finish playing with Kakashi. He picked him up and threw him next to Kurenai and Anko. Kisame and Itachi stepped back and went through the same seals before saying, Kaden, Karyu Enden no Jutsu, 6. The flames sped toward the Konoha Nin. As they got closer, Kurenai started to remember things about her and Naruto. She remembered the first time she met Naruto. Flashback, Kurenai, age 12, Naruto, age 6. Naruto was lying in an alley, beaten and battered. He looked up as he heard footsteps drawing closer and closer. He curled up expecting it to be some random villager that didn't get to beat him with the latest mob and was coming to get in on a last-minute beating. When he didn't feel anything, he looked up and was surprised to see a young girl staring at him with wide eyes. This confused him. Was this girl here to beat him? Or maybe to rub salt in his wounds? This old lady had done that once. It had stung. Like a bitch. The girl, who looked to be about 11 or 12, finally got over her shock. She crouched down next to him and asked, Hey, what happened? I heard some whimpers coming from here. I didn't expect to see a beaten-up little kid. Naruto looked on in amazement. She cared enough to ask what had happened to him. He breathed in and out a couple times to calm himself down. After a minute he finally spoke up. Some villagers and a couple ninja dragged me back here and beat me. Kurenai was shocked that the people of her beloved village would do that to a kid. Then something clicked. This was probably the Kyuubi kid. She knew she was correct when he turned to look at her and she saw the whisker-like marks on his face. She had only been 6 when the Kyuubi had attacked. She had lost her father and brother in the attack and had a rage. Ainoli hated the kid when the Hokage announced that it was sealed inside of him. But her mother, who had never hated the kid at all, had explained it like this. When you pour water into a glass, does that make the glass water? From then on she had understood that he was only the container. And asked, How would you like to come see my mother with me? Naruto hesitated, then asked, She's not gonna beat me, is she? Kurenai laughed and said, No, of course not. Come on, let's go. Naruto decided to trust someone just this once and nodded. With a little help from Kurenai he stood and they walked toward her house. End flashback. After that her mother had taken him into their home permanently. They had become friends quickly and soon became inseparable. Whenever Kurenai wasn't on a mission or with her team, she was training with or spending time with Naruto. Then she remembered the first time he kissed her. Well, accidentally kissed her. Flashback. Kurenai, age 16, Naruto, age 10. Kurenai ran through the streets jumping up and down. She had just passed the exams to become a special 7th Junin. She was now known as the Genjutsu Mistress. She had specialized in Genjutsu since she had become a Kunoichi SP. She opened the door to her house and saw her mom and Naruto with party hats on. They had a couple presents on the table along with a cake that said, Congratulations on passing. She smiled and hugged them before thanking them over and over again. They had a wonderful time, laughing and joking, until Naruto said something he shouldn't have. Man, you sure know how to make jokes, Oba-san. He said while laughing. Suddenly it got deathly quiet and cold in the room. Kare Beauty, Kurenai's mom, glared at Naruto before shouting, Oh, you did not just say that, Naruto. I am not old. She jumped up and lunged at him. He dodged, barely, and started running around the table trying to get away while apologizing again and again. He jumped onto the table and made from the dining room door, but slipped on the cake and fell forward, right onto Kurenai. Their lips met as they fell and their eyes widened in shock. To them it felt like they fell for hours, when it was really only seconds. They landed and rolled away from each other. They were both blushing a shade of deep red. Naruto looked over at her and started to apologize profusely. I'm so sorry, Kurenai-chan. I swear it was an accident. Kurenai nodded and said, It's okay. Naruto-kun. I know it was an accident. Naruto sighed in relief. Then he started to clean up the mess he made. Later that night while Kurenai was in bed she thought back to the kiss. I'm not new to kisses. I mean, I've kissed Kakashi, Asuma, and Genma when I went out with them. But why did this one feel so different? It was the best kiss I've ever had. Not only that, but it made my whole body tingle and my emotions go haywire. I can't feel anything for him. I mean, he's 10, I'm 16. It would never work out. With those last thoughts she fell into a restless slumber. End flashback. Boy, was she wrong. After that, her feelings for him had intensified. She eventually caved in and admitted to him that she was in love with him. She was surprised that he returned the feelings. After that, they had been together secretly. She closed her eyes and accepted that she was gonna die. Now she would be reunited with Naruto. At that thought she smiled. The flames sped closer and closer when someone shouted, "Hyouten, Teishida Korihei no Jutsu 8." A huge ice wall materialized between the Junin and the flames. The flames managed to penetrate the ice wall. But by that time the mysterious savior had already gotten the Junin out of the way. Itachi and Kisame looked over to where the three saviors landed to see two of them disappear in a puff of smoke. The mystery man was wearing black pants, a black sleeveless shirt, a black cloak covering everything, and a hood attached to the cloak covering his face. He stood back up from Edding Kurenai down and walked closer to the two Akatsuki members. He stopped a couple yards away from them and started to crack his knuckles. As he was doing this, Itachi noticed the ring on his left hand's little finger. His eyes narrowed and he asked, "Where did you get that ring?" The stranger laughed and said, "I took it off of Orochimaru's dead body." This time Kisame laughed before saying, "Yeah, right. Judging by your voice, height, and build, I'd say you are about 13, maybe 14 years old. There's no way you killed Orochimaru. You probably found it somewhere. Don't be foolish, Kisame. Do you think Orochimaru would just drop or forget about that ring? Of course not. Either he killed Orochimaru and took it, or he stumbled upon Orochimaru's body and took it." Itachi snapped at Kisame. They looked back at the stranger to see that he was gone. Suddenly Kisame was sent flying with a roundhouse kick to the head. Itachi tried to jump away but was shocked to see his shadow connected to the stranger's. The stranger slammed his elbow into Itachi's face, sending him into a tree. The stranger ducked under the swing. Kisame aimed at him, swept him off his feet, and planted an axe kick into his face. He jumped away just as Itachi appeared by Kisame. The three Junin were in awe. He didn't do much, but the fact alone that he actually hit the real Itachi and Kisame was amazing. And Kisame said he was around 13. That had to be impossible. The watched on as he kept evading their attacks again and again. Kisame growled and cursed. How could this kid be keeping up with them? Kisame went through hand seals and yelled, "Doden, Doryu Taiga no Jutsu 9." The mud river swept up the stranger and slammed him into a tree. As Kisame kept the jutsu going to keep the stranger there, Itachi went through hand seals and said, "Kaden, Kan Shuaha no Jutsu 10." A huge wave of flames came out of his mouth and ignited the mud river. The flames then quickly traveled up the river and hit the stranger straight on. His screams echoed through the forest for a full 2 minutes before Itachi and Kisame cut off their attack. The stranger slumped down, but then disappeared in a puff of smoke. The Akatsuki pair's eyes widened. Now it's time to face my newly created technique. Suganten. Genshuku Zukyu no Jutsu 11. They heard the stranger's voice echo throughout the forest. Itachi and Kisame slammed into the ground as the gravity around them increased 20-fold. They tried to get up, but it was extremely hard. The stranger walked out of the forest leisurely. He stood there and watched as they struggled to get up. He smirked when he realized it had been 5 minutes and they were still on their knees. He decided to lessen their burden, so he made it so the gravity was only increased 10-fold. Instead of 20, they finally stood up, but they were sweating profusely and breathing hard. "We need to get out of here. This guy is obviously really strong. We need to report about this guy to Leader Sama," Itachi thought. He used some hand signals to tell this to Kisame. He nodded and they turned back to the stranger. They needed to get out of this gravity field somehow. Itachi tried to do a kawarmi, but the gravity was too much. Suddenly the stranger snapped his fingers and the gravity field disappeared. He charged at them while saying, "I didn't want you guys to be sitting ducks. That would be too easy." He spun around Kisame and hit him in the back of his head with an elbow, then spun around again and kneed him in the stomach. He punched him in the face. sending him into a blissful unconsciousness. He turned to Itachi and fell into a loose offensive stance. Itachi narrowed his eyes and charged in with a kunai drawn. The stranger pulled out his own kunai and parried Itachi's. They clashed and then separated. Itachi was breathing irregularly and knew he had to end this. He looked over at Kisame and saw that he had regained consciousness and Kawaramied with a Mizu Bushin 12. Itachi Kawaramied with a Kage Bushin 13, and then when the stranger was right up next to it, used Bushin Bakua 14. When the stranger was blown back and disoriented, they fled into the forest. When they were a little ways away, they twisted their rings to the right, then pushed them down. There was a flash and they were gone. Unknown location. There were 7. People gathered in a dark room discussing multiple things. H and Itachi and Kisame appeared. The others were shocked to see 2 of the organization's strongest members looking worse for wear. Itachi and Kisame bowed to the leader and then Itachi spoke. Leader Sama, we met the spy at the appointed place, but discovered that we were being spied on by 3 Konoha Junin, who we identified as Hitaki Kakashi, Mitarashi Anko, and Yuhi Kurenai. We confronted them, but they ran. We pursued them and fought. We were about to finish them off, when a mysterious person rescued them. We fought, and he almost won. Against both of us at the same time. We managed to escape to report this to you. Also, he had Orochimaru's ring, Kuchin 15. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard that they were both almost taken out by one person. The leader thought about it for a moment then said, this might put a dent in our plans, but otherwise it shouldn't be too much of a problem. If he interferes again we'll take him out. Understood. The last part was directed at everyone in the room. They all nodded. The leader sighed and said, now back to business. Deidara and Sasori, you are being assigned to the Shukaku vessel. Hidan and Kakuzu, you are being assigned to the vessel of the Nekomata. Zetsu, you're being assigned to the vessel of the Soko. Itachi and Kisame, you're to find all the information you can on the vessel of the Kyubi. We already have the Gobi, and the Rokubi, so that leaves the Sanbi, the Shichibi, and the Hachibi, which will be assigned accordingly when each of you have captured your targets. Okay, now everyone is dismissed. They nodded and disappeared, leaving the leader and the unnamed member alone. The unnamed member looked at the leader and asked, how long do you think it will take them to capture their targets? The leader looked up at him, her and said, not very long. The only thing that worries me is the fact that Orochimaru is dead and Naruto had yet to resurface. Not only that, but now there is this guy, who can take on 2 of our strongest members and win, that we have to worry about, too. The unnamed member nodded and left the room silently, leaving The leader of Akatsuki to ponder recent events. Forest clearing, right after explosion. The stranger was blown back by the explosion, but flipped over and recovered his footing. Not knowing that his hood had been blown off, he turned to look at the 3 Junin he had just saved. The truth was he really didn't know who he saved. All he knew was that they were Konoha nin. When he saw them he was ally pissed to see Kakashi was among them. If he had known he was there, he would have left him to die. Then he saw her. He wanted to run up and kiss her, but kept himself in control. When the Junin, who were getting up and had yet to see that the stranger's hood was off, saw him they all had dropped jaws and wide eyes. He noticed the looks they were giving him and asked, what? Kurenai tried to regain her lost breath and stuttered out, NN Naruto. Naruto blinked. He reached up and felt his torn hood. Oh crap, I wasn't supposed to be revealed yet. I wanted to sweep in, get Nai-chan, and get out before I was seen. Damn it, he thought angrily. Kakashi shook his head and said, no, this can't be Naruto. First, he doesn't have the whisker-like marks that Naruto had. Second, although he has blonde hair, it also has red streaks in it. Naruto was pure blonde. Third, his build and height don't match Naruto's. Last, he just made Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame, 2S class missing nin, retreat. Naruto would have died in seconds. Quote, when he saw that Kurenai actually believed Kakashi, he was glad and disappointed at the same time. I thought Kakashi was a master at looking underneath the underneath. I can knock all those things away easily. First, I used makeup to cover the marks. A nin would suspect genjutsu, so when they tried to cancel it and nothing happened, they would be fooled. Second, the red streaks could be hair dye, but in my case it's from partially merging with Kyuubi. Third, it has been 8 months since he last saw me. I have had time to grow, and I had time to train. Last, if he had looked underneath from the beginning and saw my true power, it would be believable that I could at least tie with those two. I'm glad that I haven't been discovered, but I thought Kurenai would at least see through those horrible reasons. Naruto thought. Then Naruto felt his chakra drain to about genin level. He staggered around and fell to the ground. The Konoha nin rushed to his side and Anko asked, "Hey. What's wrong?" Naruto's vision started to blur and he tried to answer before he passed out, "I have a lot of chakra. So much that when I'm fighting I don't realize how much I use. I used a shitload of chakra in the fight, and it just drained from my system. I'll be okay." Before he could finish he passed out. Kakashi sighed and picked him up. He nodded to Kurenai and Anko and they took off towards Konoha. In a few hours they were at the gate. They bypassed the guards and rushed toward the hospital. Konoha Hospital. 1 hour later. Naruto got up off the hospital bed and stretched. He took off his hospital gown and threw on his shirt and cloak. A nurse walked into the room to check on him and her jaw dropped. Naruto looked over at her and asked, "What are you looking at? Is there something on my face? Why you shouldn't even be conscious yet, much less moving around." The nurse yelled. "Why's that?" Naruto asked. "Because you have the chakra capacity of a cage and you suffered from chakra exhaustion. There's no way you could have recovered yet." The nurse yelled again. Naruto rubbed his neck and thought, "Damn, good thing I subconsciously suppressed my chakra level." What he actually said was, "You don't have to yell all the time. I've always been a fast healer and I am always back to normal after a little rest. Now, I must take my leave." He slid the window open and jumped out. He landed on the ground below and shot off towards Ichiraku SP ramen stand. He sat down and was about to order when 2 Anbu appeared behind him and grabbed his arms. They slammed his head into the table. The Anbu on the left spoke, "You are being ordered to see the Hokage. Don't put up a fight, cause we don't want to hurt you." Naruto laughed and disappeared in a puff of smoke. He reappeared in front of the stand and laughed at the Anbu again before blurring out of existence. The 2 original Anbu and some reinforcements sped after him and the chase was on. He led them through the bathhouses where some of the Anbu had the crap beat out of them by most of the women there. After that he lost some of them in the shopping district. He sent some cage buncheons to beat up some of them. Finally 4 Anbu captured him and dragged him to the Hokage. They opened the door to the Hokage's office to see Naruto already sitting there. The one they were holding laughed and disappeared. They had been chasing a fake the whole time. They sulked away, their pride badly beaten and bruised. The real Naruto laughed and clutched his sides. Finally calming down he faced Tsunade. "I got the report from the 3 Junin I sent on the mission. You made Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame retreat. Although you were exhausted afterwards and passed out. That is an amazing accomplishment. Not only that, you killed Orochimaru and are already up and about even though you should be in bed resting still. So, just who or what are you?" she asked. Naruto sat there for a second before saying, "What am I? I am a victim. I am someone who since birth has been dealt a horrible hand. Who am I? I am known by many names. Scum, demon, a plague to humanity." He paused, then continued. "I have given you a sufficient amount of clues. Now tell me, have you discovered my true identity?" Tsunade's eyes widened and she asked hesitantly, Naruto. "Is that really you? I thought you wouldn't have remembered me." "But, yes, it is me," Naruto said. How? What happened to you? You were reported dead. How are you alive?" Tsunade fired a barrage of questions at him. At this Naruto his killing intent flared so much it had Tsunade gripping the arms of her chair and breathing heavily. When he realized the effects he was causing he reined in his emotions and stopped his killing intent. He looked out the window of Tsunade's office and stayed silent. A few minutes later he said, "The fight at the Valley of the End wasn't that hard. It was going in my favor for most of the fight." Flashback, halfway point in fight. Sasuke, standing on the shore, panted and slumped his shoulders. He just didn't understand. He looked up at Naruto, who was standing out on the water. He barely had a scratch on him. It aggravated Sasuke to be beaten so thoroughly, while Naruto wasn't even winded. How had the Dobi gotten so strong? His anger, frustration and confusion made the curse seal activate. Also, his Sharingan morphed until both his eyes had the third Tomo, signifying complete mastery. He grinned and shot forth. Naruto, not noticing his mastered Sharingan, still held back. What a mistake. Sasuke's speed had increased with the help of his cursed seal. Couple that with his mastered Sharingan and he was significantly more powerful. He slammed his fist into Naruto's face, lifting him up off the water. He spun around and slammed his fist into his stomach, sending him flying into the cliff side. Naruto coughed up some blood, then got up and stretched. That cursed seal really made Sasuke more powerful. He would have to take it up a notch. He flew through hand seals and shouted, Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu. Water style. Water dragon blast technique. The dragon shot out of the water and sped toward Sasuke. Thinking fast, Sasuke went through his own set of hand seals, shouting, Kaden, Ryuka no Jutsu. Fire style. Dragon fire technique. The two jutsu crashed into each other. They cancelled each other out, but left a thick mist in their wake. Naruto slinked through the mist, not making a single sound. He spread his chakra out and looked for Sasuke's presence. He located it quickly and sped towards him. Sasuke turned at the sound of slight splashing only to get roundhouse kicked in the face. He flew across the lake top and crashed on the shore. Naruto created 4-Kage Bunshin and charged at Sasuke, who had just stood up. The 4-Kage Bunshin succeeded in kicking the dazed Uchiha into the air, where the real Naruto was preparing a jutsu. Uzumaki Naruto Raiko Sentu Renden. Uzumaki Naruto lightning punch combo, he shouted. He punched Sasuke in the gut, sending the pent-up lightning in Naruto's hand right into him. He convulsed in mid-air and fell to the ground. Naruto landed and smirked at the Uchiha's prone form. His eyes widened considerably when the prone form disappeared in a puff of smoke. He noticed the sound of chirping birds a little too late. The Chidori pierced into his chest, going from the back to the front. He looked down at Sasuke's hand and saw that it was still covered in electricity. He hacked up blood and slid off Sasuke's hand. He fell into the water and started to sink. Sasuke smirked and started walking away. He had made it to the shore when he felt an explosion of power. He looked back to see Naruto rising out of the water. His eyes widened when he saw the Chidori wound heal before his eyes. Sasuke thought that Naruto would be using his special red chakra that he used in the Chunin exams. He hadn't been there to actually see it, but Sakura had informed him of it. He was surprised to see that the chakra was blue. How was it possible to have such vast amounts of chakra? Naruto had to have a cage-level chakra capacity. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him, knocking him into the air with a sweeping kick, then axe-kicking him into the ground, causing a miniature crater. This time it was Sasuke's turn to cough up blood. Naruto picked him up and threw him out onto the middle of the lake. He skidded across the water, but regained his balance quickly. He stood up, only to get axe-kicked in the head by Naruto. He careened into the lake and sped toward the bottom. Naruto kept his guard up, knowing that Sasuke wasn't done yet. He went through hand seals and held the last seal, waiting for Sasuke to resurface. He came up seconds later, a little ways behind Naruto and to his right. But he had also prepared a jutsu and he unleashed it as soon as he came up, shouting, Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu. Fire style. Grand fireball technique. But Naruto had predicted that Sasuke had readied a jutsu, so he had Kawaramide with a recently made Kage Bunshin. As soon as Sasuke released his fireball at the clone, Naruto used his jutsu, Hyouten, Shitegyu no Jutsu. Ice style. Body freeze technique. The water around Sasuke's feet froze, then spread, with a surprising speed, up Sasuke's body. Before it could get past his knees, Sasuke fired another Gukaku at Naruto, making him stop the jutsu before it could spread any more. Sasuke quickly pulled out 2 kunai and slam ed the blunt ends into the ice repeatedly. After a couple hits the ice shattered and he was free. Although he had gotten out, he had taken too long. Naruto had already dodged the fireball and was in front of Sasuke. He grabbed Sasuke's collar and kneed him in the stomach, He grabbed him by his hair and slammed Sasuke's face into his knee. He could hear Sasuke's teeth breaking in his mouth. Naruto then kicked Sasuke in the chest, knocking him back. Sasuke started breathing heavily, then Naruto felt an increase in power. The markings of the cursed seal covered his whole body. His hair turned grayish-white, and a cross-shaped thing appeared on his face. There was a ripping sound as two huge hand-like wings sprouted out of his back. His fingernails sharpened into claws and his face took on a kind of feral look. He flexed his claws and smirked. Now he knew he could beat the Dobi. He had only felt this kind of in the presence of Itachi and Orochimaru. He laughed a deep, rough laugh and charged at Naruto once again. Naruto dodged to the right, but was flung into the cliff wall by Sasuke's wing. He stumbled to his feet. Sasuke's speed had increased drastically. He would have to take his weights off. Before Sasuke could do anything, Naruto crouched and snapped the buckles that were holding his weights. He pulled them off and gently set them on the ground. Sasuke eyed the weights wearily. He knew that if they weighed a lot, he could lose this fight. He was right. Before he could blink, Naruto was on him. With a series of punch-kick combos, Sasuke was sent flying. He couldn't even land before Naruto was on him again. It was a massacre for the next 20 minutes. Finally Naruto stopped, landing on the ground lightly. Sasuke landed opposite him. He charged up his Chidori and Naruto charged up his Rasengan. They sped at each other and shoved their attacks forward. Naruto felt some of his overexerted muscles rip. This caused him to stumble and Sasuke's Chidori to pierce his chest, again. He slammed his weakened Rasengan into Sasuke's arm, blowing it off. Sasuke started screaming and crying in pain. Naruto wobbled before falling over. Flashback end. It was about 5 minutes before I felt Kakashi's chakra signature, Naruto said. He arrived a couple minutes later, and that's when I felt Orochimaru's chakra signature coming our way. When he picked Sasuke up, I knew I was probably going to die by Orochimaru's hand. He explained to me how Sasuke was more important than a clanless nobody. He left me, knowing that I would probably die. He didn't care. Tsunade's eyes widened and she said, I can't believe I actually fell for his heartfelt story. That conniving sneak. What happened afterwards? Naruto sighed and continued, well, Orochimaru took me to Oto. Then He explained to me what he was going to do to me. Naruto went into a detailed description of what had happened to him in Oto. Then he explained how he partially fused with Kyuubi and escaped. After Hi's tale, Tsunade asked a question he had hoped she wouldn't. When you told me about your fight with Sasuke, you used some jutsu that nobody knew you could use. Why did you hide your skills, and where didn't skills? Naruto sighed again and replied, I guess I can tell you. You have to promise you won't tell anyone about this unless you have my permission. Do you promise? I promise, Tsunade said. Naruto nodded his thanks and began his tale of how he and Kurenai met. He explained how they had trained with each other and how he had met her mother and how they had become fast friends. Then he explained how his and Kurenai's friendship had become something more. So you guys love each other? Tsunade asked. Yes, Naruto answered without hesitation. Tsunade nodded and said, okay. Kakashi will be demoted to Chunin and suspended for 3 months with no pay. Also, he will do mostly D-ranked missions for 2 months. I wish I could do more, but Konoha had yet to fully recover from the war and Kakashi is a strong shinobi. Even if he is a bastard. Naruto shook his head and said, you'll have to wait to punish Hai until my identity is revealed. Tsunade sighed and said, damn it, I wanted to punish him now. Oh well, Naruto asked, so what am I going to do? I don't want my identity revealed yet, because I haven't decided if I want to stay. Tsunade thought for a second and said, well, you look about 16. So we could say you are Minato's younger brother that nobody knew about. After all, Minato kept many secrets. No one even knew who his wife was. It was a surprise he even told us he had a wife. You could say you came back to see him, acting like you don't know about Kyuubi's attack. That would explain your close resemblance to Minato and your power level, since most Namikas were very strong before they were wiped out. Now what about your name? Naruto sat there thinking hard, before finally saying, my name could be Chishio Kashiku. Tsunade blinked and asked, Chishio. Blood, are you sure? Naruto nodded and got up to leave. He stopped, turned around, and hugged Tsunade one last time. He was about to leave again when Tsunade stopped him. She pulled open her desk and got something out. He put a key in the palm of his hand. He stared at it in confusion. She answered his unasked question. This is the key to the Namikaze compound. Ah, I see. Got to keep up the part of a Namikaze. Naruto said. Tsunade shook her head and said, no Naruto. I think it is about time you knew who your father was. Your father was Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage. Naruto's eyes widened and he started choking on his own saliva. He coughed and regained his breathing. He looked at Tsunade and asked, you're serious? This isn't some cruel joke. She shook her head. She hugged one more time before shooing him out of her office. She really needed some sake right now. Naruto walked out of her office and out of the Hokage's tower. After walking around Konoha for a couple minutes, he realized that Tsunade hadn't given him directions to the Namikaze compound. He sighed and shushed into her office. He was shocked that she had already downed 2 bottles of sake and was asleep. He shook her shoulder, momentarily forgetting about her super strength and anger. Tsunade, used to hitting her Anbu guards for waking her up, swung her fist and sent Naruto flying through the roof of the Hokage's tower. As he flew through the air he decided that this had been a decent day. Now if he could only land in the Namikaze compound, right on a bed. A few seconds later he landed, but not where he wanted. He landed next to the Namikaze compound, in the Hyuga compound. To be exact, he landed in the Hyuga compound's dumpster. He sighed as he picked a banana peel off his shirt, and thought, man, what a day. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.